Okay, this is the second part of the video, and in this video we are focusing on the approach of how to answer the question that asks you to plan an experiment in paper 6 IGCSE alternative to practicals, right? In part 1 of the video, I advise you to use these subheadings to answer the question that asks you to plan an experiment. And in part 1, I discussed about the first 3 subheadings, that is different variables that you use in your planning. What are the 3 different variables that you use? Independent variable, which you change and measure. Dependent variable, that changes along with the independent variable. This is getting affected because of the change you made in the independent variable. You also measure this. And third set of variables are called control variables, or variables to be kept constant in performing the experiment, right? So these are the variables which are not changed. All right, so in this second part of the video we are going to focus on the next 2 subheadings, which are the additional apparatus required and the method. Okay, all right, without further ado, let us use the same 2 past year papers, Feb March 23 and then Feb March 22, to discuss these 2 subheadings. Okay, first let us focus on Feb March 23. So let's reread the question. A student investigates the motion of a ball through the air. Okay, plan an experiment which will enable the student to investigate how the range of the ball depends on the angle at which it is launched. So you remember, this is our keyword. Why do we need to note this down? Because at the end of the experiment your conclusion is going to be about this statement. Okay, all right, so from this experiment we come to know that we change the angle at which the ball is launched, which is our independent variable. And how do you measure the angle? What do you need for that? Definitely you need a protractor, right? Protractor. This is independent variable, by the way, independent variable. Now, by changing the angle, what is getting changed? The range of the ball. What is range of the ball? Range is the horizontal distance that the ball travels after leaving the end of the channel until it hits the ground, right? So, the range of the ball, how do you measure the range of the ball? Which is the dependent variable. What do you need? You need definitely a meter rule, right? Okay, now further, the question says the apparatus available includes only a flexible channel as shown in figure 4.1 on the right side bottom. You can see which can be bent at different angles at the bottom edge of the channel. Let's say that the bottom edge is at a height of h1 from the floor, and the top edge of the channel is at a height of h2 from the floor, right? So the bottom edge can be varied for different angles. How do you measure it? With the help of the protractor, right? And then okay, so you have selection of balls with you, each of different diameter and mass. Are you going to use all the different sets of balls you have? Definitely not. So here comes the third set of variables, which are the variables to be kept constant: the diameter of the ball and mass of the ball. The entire experiment is performed with a single ball of same diameter and same mass, right? Okay, now what are the additional apparatus required according to the question now? So apparatus additionally required by us to perform the experiment are: number 1, protractor; number 2, meter rule. Maybe you see, when the ball is dropped at the top edge of this channel, it moves through the slope, and upon reaching this bottom edge here, it flies off from the bottom edge, right? And then it flies and reaches the ground here, isn't it? So you need to, what is the range? The range is the distance from the tip of the channel until it reaches the ground. So this one is the range, right? So you need to keep a marker here, because after the ball reaches the ground, it is not going to stop over there. It will slightly move and then stop, right? But we need the point at which the ball reaches the ground. So you can even use a marker. Marker to mark the point on the ground where the ball hits. Mark the point on the ground where the ball hits, right? So these are the additional apparatus required in performing this experiment. Okay, now let's focus on the additional apparatus required in the second experiment in paper Feb March 22. If you remember, this experiment talks about immersion heater. So a student in this experiment wants to investigate heating of the water using an immersion heater. What is an immersion heater? It's an electrical heater that can be placed directly into the water, right? And you supply power to the electrical power to the heater, and the electrical energy is converted into heat energy and it heats up the water. Fine. Now plan an experiment. Keyword: plan an experiment to investigate how one factor, what was the factor we selected? That is a independent variable, right? What was the independent variable we selected, if you remember? That is the electric current. For me, it was the electric current that I picked up, right? So what do you need to measure the electric current? Of course, you need an ammeter, right? So by changing the electric current, I need to plan my experiment so that I need to find how it affects the rate at which the temperature of the water rises, right? So this is my dependent quantity, dependent variable. So what do I need to measure the temperature? Definitely I need a thermometer, right? And if you remember, what are the variables we kept constant or controlled variables? In other way, we can call them as controlled variables, right? Constant variables. What are the variables we kept constant? Definitely volume of the water, then initial temperature of the water, then initial temperature of water. Please mention it is initial temperature of water and not the room, yeah? And then the what else? Time of passage of electricity. And then we are supplying energy by the power supply, electric power supply. So we need to keep the voltage of the supply to be constant, right? Just a quick recap. Okay, now let's check what are the apparatus we have from the question. We already have an immersion heater and equipment to connect the circuit, part of which is shown here. You see, this is in complete design. You need to complete it, right? To complete this circuit, what are the other things you need? You have a heater, you have a beaker to contain water. So you need to fill this beaker with water. Don't forget to include this step in your method, yeah? You need to fill the beaker with water until the immersion heater is completely immersed in it, right? All right. Now, the circuit is incomplete, but you have a variable resistor to vary the current and power supply. So what else do you need? You need to connect an ammeter. So the missing element here is an ammeter. And then what else do you have here? Of course, a switch, right? Switch. So what are the additional apparatus required now? Apparatus additional are: number one, you need an ammeter, you need a switch to complete the circuit, and what are the other apparatus given here? A stop clock, but not the thermometer. So you need a thermometer because you are going to measure the temperature, right? So you need a thermometer. And do you need anything else that are essential in performing this experiment? I think that's all, right? So these are the additional apparatus required. Okay, So that's all about finding apparatus required from the question, okay, other than the apparatus already given in the question. All right, we will focus on the method, the subheading method, in part 3 of the video. Okay, bye.